Hello and welcome back to ParticularPixels. I'm Xiaoling and this is Kingdoms and Castles. Kingdoms and Castles is a game about growing your kingdom from a tiny hamlet to a large sprawling city, all the while managing your economy and defending your lands against Viking invaders and the occasional dragon. You start by choosing the difficulty of the game, of which there are three: easy mode, where you won't be attacked at all, so you can just focus on the building aspect of the game and just make the castle of your dreams, I suppose; normal mode; and hard mode, where the winters are going to be longer, which makes food more scarce, and the attacks are going to be more difficult and more frequent as well, so if you want a more challenging experience. After you've done all this, you'll randomly generate an island until you find one that you are happy with the layout of, name your kingdom, and then you're on your way. The first thing, though, that I noticed when I started the game was the complete lack of a tutorial. There are no explanations to any of the systems in the game, or any advice at all on how to start out the game. But if you're familiar with other city builders, it shouldn't take you too long to work things out, since Kingdoms and Castles is a relatively simple game. But honestly, in my opinion, there still needs to be a tutorial despite these things. For example, the way through my game, I built a barracks, trained up 20 units, which takes a little while, and had no idea how to move them out of the barracks or how to get them to do anything in my city. So when the Vikings eventually attacked, I had 2 barracks full of soldiers sitting around doing absolutely nothing. I eventually worked out that you need to build a hero unit at the war chamber, send the hero unit to the barracks, and then select recruit in order for him to recruit all of the soldiers that you've trained in your barracks before you can actually move them around your kingdom. Some explanation of this would have been nice. The economy of this game is also very simple. If you're expecting complex building chains like Settler 7, for example, or even Stronghold or Stronghold Crusaders, you are probably going to be a little bit disappointed here. You build farms to feed your people. There are 3 different types of houses in the game: hamlets, cottages, and manors. They are pretty much all identical for all intents and purposes, except for how many people they can accommodate. You'll mine stone, which will build walls obviously. You'll mine iron to make tools and to make weapons. The tools will increase the effectiveness of your miners and your foresters and such, and the weapons are obviously going to be for your soldiers. You will also eventually build a hospital for when your people get the plague, and then stockpiles to store all of your goods. There are weather effects in the game as well, so you've got your different seasons, and in snow obviously your farms aren't doing anything. Sometimes there are rain that can flood your farms. You can also build windmills and things like that will improve the efficiency of your farms. But that is pretty much it with regard to the complexity of the game. There is a happiness mechanic in the game, so your people, when they have everything they need, will be very happy. Having neighbors, having access to food, having access to charcoal and things like that will keep them happier. The happier your town is, the more people it's going to attract each year. If your taxes are too high or they're not getting things they need, people will start leaving. Each of your citizens also has skill levels, so they improve at a specific job if they continue to do it, ranging from journeyman to grand masters. The higher the skill level of a citizen, the more benefit they're going to offer, or the more bonuses they'll offer to that particular craft. So for example, grandmaster farmers will add more yield to a particular farm. And so this is the first aspect of the game, managing your economy. As I said, it's not very complicated, and there really aren't a great deal of buildings available in the game. It's casual and is pretty simplistic. The other aspect of the game is the defense part, where you'll be defending your city against invading Vikings and dragons. As I mentioned earlier, Vikings will arrive by boat and attack your town. They'll kidnap your people and then they will leave and also set some of your buildings on fire. The invasions do get harder as your kingdom increases in size, and there'll be more units attacking, and eventually they'll be bringing ogres as well, which will have a nice habit of just smashing through your walls and smashing through your buildings. And on top of that, they take a lot of damage before they actually die. The archer towers, ballistas, and soldiers cost money to maintain, so at a certain point you are going to have to start taxing your population as well. So there's a little bit of balancing going on to keep your people happy and to be able to maintain your military. Now, throughout my 5 hours with the game, I never ended up in a situation where I was struggling. There were always people arriving to my town despite Viking and dragon attacks, and yes, sometimes food will be low, but it always seems to recover. I never felt that the game was overly challenging, and even on the harder mode, it was, yes, perhaps a little bit harder to get started, but nothing overly challenging either. I never really also felt that I needed to pay attention to the skill levels of my population, and honestly, nor did I care. It didn't seem to make any tangible difference in my experience. Yes, the guy was a grandmaster and he got kidnapped, so now there's a journeyman. But the overall food count didn't change that much. It didn't lead me into dire straits or anything like that. There was always food coming in. And I never had a shortage of resources or money either, even though I taxed my people next to the bare minimum. I suppose even in the early stages of the game, when I had no defense, Vikings coming in and taking my people didn't really slow down my progress that much. The time I spent with the game was enjoyable. It's a casual, relaxing experience. I did, however, eventually start longing for more depth. I really enjoyed the Crusader and the Stronghold games and even the Settler games, so I felt there was a little bit of lack of depth in this particular title. The economy aspect of the game, as I said, was very simple. There aren't a lot of buildings, and unfortunately nothing is upgradable at all. And even with regard to the castle defenses and the castle building, it suffered from the same issue. You basically build walls, and if you've got a part of the wall that's slightly higher, you can put an archer tower or a ballista on it, and you can build moats around your castle as well. And unfortunately, none of those things are upgradable either. So your archer tower will be your archer tower. You don't get better archer towers. And so to me, it felt like there's no sense of progression outside of your city actually just getting bigger and your kingdom getting more towers, really. It just lacks any kind of depth. There were also a number of issues that I want to talk about that I came across in the game. Now, I mentioned the lack of the tutorial already. That seems to be a little bit of an oversight. The game also does not have an exclusive full screen function, so if you, like me, have a second screen, you will inevitably find your mouse cursor on your second screen on occasion, and that can be a little bit annoying at times as well. Nothing game breaking though. The other issue is closing information windows is not very accurate, and this is somewhat of a problem. Most buildings can be disabled with a small tick box, so then all your staff will leave that building and then they'll be free to do other stuff. The problem is that when you click the X to close the window, the detection is not very good. So even though your mouse cursor is right next to the X, you can still by mistake untick the box even though your mouse cursor is nowhere near the box. And this is not an issue most of the time, but when you have a barracks with 20 soldiers, which as I mentioned before takes some while to train, disabling the building will disband all 20 soldiers, forcing you to retrain them all. The inaccuracy of this interface really needs to be fixed. You can of course right click to close any window, but despite this UI inaccuracy should not be present in the game. There are also no hotkeys in the game either, so everything's going to be mouse clicking and there are no key bindings, making several of the actions in the game somewhat inconvenient. Building roads and walls force you to click down individual blocks. There's no way to drag a road or to drag a wall to the length that you want. And if you want to clear an area of trees, you'll manually have to remove the trees from each tile. There's no way to drag select a group of trees and have them all be marked to be removed. And again, when you have a hero with soldiers, you have to manually click them around the map. They won't automatically defend your kingdom when attacked, and you can't issue orders to them. Now, some of these of course are quality of life changes, but to me in a game like this, I think they would have gone a long way to making the experience far less cumbersome and more enjoyable. Finally, there are some frame rate issues that I came across when your city gets bigger. Now, on my system, the game started with around 120 frames a second, eventually dropping to below 50 when the city was larger and there was a thunderstorm going on or some of the other weather effects. Now, the one thing I want to add also is that the islands that you build your kingdoms on are not very large in the first place, so it is a surprise to me that the frame rate drops. Now, I understand that city builders are renowned for having frame rate issues even on the fastest PCs, and that frame rate doesn't necessarily affect the game experience with these type of games, and for the most part I would tend to agree. But despite this game's charming art style, the details and the poly count are definitely pretty low on all the buildings and all the units, and it looks very simplistic, and in no way does it warrant such a low frame rate on the system that I have. And the reason I bring this up in the first place is that if on my system with a 1080 and an i7-6700 with a big city and I'm dropping below 50, anyone with lower system specs are inevitably going to run into frame rate problems as well. But outside of those issues I mentioned and some of those quality of life changes I've been talking about, I never came across any crashes or bugs that stood out or ruined my experience with this particular game. And I'd like to add that it may sound like I'm making many criticisms of Kingdoms and Castles, but at the end of the day, I did enjoy my time with the game, and at no point did I feel bored or feel like playing something else because of it. The relaxing music and the charming art style of the game definitely got my attention, and the gameplay was enough to keep me engaged, at least for a while. Kingdoms and Castles is a simple game, and perhaps that's what it sets out to be. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but you need to be aware of that going in. This is a casual kingdom management defense game that's going to offer a few hours of enjoyment. Replayability and longevity wise, yeah, that's going to depend on what kind of player you are. For me personally though, I don't think the game has the depth that's going to keep me entertained for a great deal of time. For those of you who are looking for more depth, you're better off playing something like Stronghold, Crusader, or Stronghold. Honestly, those are still really good, especially with the HD versions. If you are content with getting a very casualized version of that type of game, then you'll probably find something to enjoy here in Kingdoms and Castles. Anyway guys, that pretty much wraps up the video. I don't really think there's anything else I need to say. If you have any questions, you can let me know in the comments section below. I've been Xiaoling. Until next time.